Okay, thanks very much then. Good morning and welcome to colleagues and officers to the meeting of the People's Select Committee. I'm John McCabe, I'm Chairman of the People's Select Committee. And just to inform you that the government has temporarily removed the legal requirement for local authorities to hold meetings in person during the coronavirus pandemic. Local authorities have been handed new powers to hold public meetings virtually. This meeting of the People's Select Committee will remain accessible to the public as it is being streamed live on YouTube. Also ensuring that councillors, officers and the wider public are able to follow government advice on social distancing measures in order to stop the spread of the virus. I'd like to ask all officers and elected members to observe our protocol for virtual meetings by asking that you mute your microphone when you are not speaking. The Strategy and Democracy Support Officers may also mute microphones to help avoid background noise or upon my request to support effective chairing and administration of this meeting. Can I also ask that when members or colleagues or officers wish to speak that they identify themselves for the benefit of any members of the public or press who are observing this meeting. And as a matter of decorum, if you do have a mobile phone by your iPad or your computer, could you put it on silent, please? I'll now ask each member of the committee to confirm their attendance. Councillor Adam Ellison.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Jim Foreman. Councillor David Francis.
Morning, Chair.
Morning. Councillor Pat Hay.
Morning.
Morning. Councillor Joan Keegan.
Present, Chair.
Thanks, Joan. Councillor Geraldine Kilgour.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Eileen Lisk. Councillor Margaret Peacock.
Yeah, Chair.
Councillor Jim Perry. Councillor Richie Porthouse.
I'm here, Chair.
Councillor Lynn Proudlock. Got you. I've taken note of that, Sean. Councillor John Robertson.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning. Councillor Alan Smith.
Here.
Right on. Councillor Susan Traynor.
Present.
Thank you very much. I haven't received any apologies from anybody. That is the first item of business. Next item of business is declarations of interest. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest, please?
Yeah, Chair. Related to item 4, I'm on the board of South Tyneside Homes.
Okay, thanks for that, Margaret.
Chair, Geraldine.
Councillor Kilgour.
Yeah, Chair, on item 4, I'm an employee of the Department for Work and Pensions, so I'd like to declare an interest for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If there are any matters that crop up during the meeting and you feel you need to declare, always best to over-declare than under-declare. That's my advice to everybody.
Chair.
But it's what, 2 seconds, it's what the public's perception is of your position in regard to the item that's being discussed. Now, who was that asking for the chair there?
Chair.
Who's that?
John Robertson.
Councillor Robertson.
Chair, could I just ask for the 2 councillors that's expressed a declaration of interest for my benefit and the people watching? What is the declaration of interest? I know they've said they're employers or they're associated with South Tyneside Homes, but it's still not understood how it clashes.
2 seconds. Councillor Peacock, obviously you're on the board of South Tyneside Homes, so universal credit is a subject that we'll be discussing, and a lot of people who are renting from South Tyneside Homes claim universal credit. Is that my understanding of your declaration?
Yes, Chair.
And Councillor Kilgour?
Yes, Chair.
Could you explain your declaration, please? I'm too sure where that was.
Yes, Chair, just as usual, it's my standing declaration on my both pecuniary and obviously personal interests. As an employee of the department who administers universal credit, it's absolutely appropriate that I do declare. I don't work on universal credit, but it is appropriate just in case there are any misunderstandings to declare. But it's already in my public interests, yeah.
Councillor Robertson?
Thanks very much.
Okay. Right. Next item of business. The minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of February 2020. They've been circulated to members in advance of the meeting and are they agreed as a true record?
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Chair.
Are there any matters arising? Councillor Robertson?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, you'll be aware that obviously the scrutiny committee, which you're part of, has just recently made the decision to agree to the bedded space proposed by the CCG at Haven Court for the 4 beds. What I'd like to bring to this committee's attention, being the People Select Committee, is throughout the whole consultation exercise, the CCG and others repeatedly stated that St Clair's Hospice was at half occupancy, 51%. I've got articles out the Shields Gazette where Matt Brown said that himself. Now, I believe it needs brought to the attention of this committee and the council itself that was dishonest to 50% in the half occupancy, because in the St Clair's accounts that's filed at the Charity Commission and Companies House, it clearly states in 2016 the occupancy was 66%. In 2017 it went up 1%. So I think this committee needs to take it forward that the vote was taken on dishonest information.
Yeah, Councillor Robertson, look, you're making a fair point, but this is the wrong committee to make that point at.
Yeah.
There is a meeting next week of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, where certainly that point can be made, and I can make that point on your behalf if you wish.
If you don't mind.
But it's not for this committee to decide that particular issue at this particular time.
Yeah, I agree, Chair. And as I say, I think the councillors that voted in favour were misled on the percentage of occupancy at St Clair's.
Well, I'm not going to make any comment on that in this particular meeting, but I will raise it next Wednesday at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you very much.
Geraldine, I have a comment to make, please.
Right, we're going to move on. The next item of business.
Chair, I think there needs to be a point of order raised.
The next item of business is item 3, digital inclusion and data poverty. A very, very important subject, I feel, for this committee to look at. And I'm now going to ask Caroline Harper, Digital and ICT Corporate Lead, to give a presentation on digital inclusion and data poverty.
Chair, could I interject the point of order, please?
Over to yourself, Caroline Harper. Thank you.
I'll come in later on that then, Chair.
Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. I've been asked to come along and talk a little bit about digital and data poverty, so I shall just talk through the slides that have been included in your pack, and I'm happy to take any questions around what we understand is the position in the borough and what we're trying to do to improve it. So, as people would probably imagine, the pandemic has accelerated the shift towards digital services in all sectors of society. In some cases, that's been a good thing because it has helped essential services to continue, particularly during the lockdown at the beginning of the pandemic, and it meant care could continue, and obviously GP services. We think that given the long-term consequences of the pandemic and the ongoing technical progress, that this change will be here to stay across society in general. And looking back at some statistics, in 1998, we can see that only 9% of UK households had internet access, but by 2020, this had risen to 96% of UK households. However, it does drop down to 80% for single person households over 65. And I think that's the key in terms of how this is impacting on different parts of society and our community. Another interesting fact is 89% of adults report that they use the internet daily or almost daily. So in some sense, digital inclusion has been achieved. It is quite prevalent in society. But a report by Lloyds Bank, who do a lot of work around consumer inclusion and digital inclusion and support, identified that around 16% of our population can't use internet or devices without help. 22% say that they don't have the digital skills that they need for everyday life. The over 70s have 77% of low digital engagement, and we know that people with an impairment are 25% less likely to be able to get online. It's also known that household income is a contributing factor to levels of digital inclusion, with 4 in 10 benefits claimants reporting that they have very low digital inclusion. Now, we've done what we can to find data for the North East and for our borough. And across the North East, it is reported that 49% of the population have low or very low digital engagement. And the really concerning fact is that without intervention, it's anticipated that this will only rise to 40% by 2030. We did find some data relating to South Tyneside, and this showed that by 2017, our borough was being assessed as having a medium risk of digital inclusion. That was an improvement from 2015 when it had been assessed as a high risk. And we do know that over 99% of our properties have access to superfast broadband. That's obviously something a resident or tenant has to choose to pay for. But we do know that there is below national average rollout for fibre, and that is the next sort of standard for internet connectivity. So we do need to address that within the borough. So looking in a bit more detail about what is required for good digital engagement, obviously you need access to the right device for the task. You know, people now use tablets, laptops, PCs, and increasingly smartphone. More people can't use the council website via a smartphone than anything else. And increasingly people now use smart speakers to do things on the internet. You need to have connectivity. So as I've just talked about, you need to have high capacity broadband or fibre. Or if you're on your phone, you need to have mobile data or access to Wi-Fi, and hopefully secure public Wi-Fi. Skills are important. There's a set of skills now called Essential Digital Skills for Life, which is just about helping people do things securely and safely online. But then there's also the confidence. Are people going to be confident that if they go online, that the service that they've requested has been successful? And people are rightly very concerned about how their data might be used or misused. Everyone will be familiar with the stories in the press about bank details being stolen, dates of birth being stolen. So it is a genuine concern. And then the last point is motivation. Some of the studies have identified that up to a third of people who currently aren't online say they're not interested. And 48% of the digitally excluded say that nothing would motivate them to get online. So if we look at the benefits of being digitally engaged, well, for our residents, it's been shown that you will have an improved life expectancy if you have access to digital skills and opportunities. You will have better and increased employment opportunities. Salaries will be higher. Online shopping can be up to 13% cheaper. Online transactions can be 30 minutes faster. Increasingly, and particularly during the last few months, people are using it as a way to stay in touch with their friends, their family, and their wider community. It's a way to access services at a time and at a location that suits you. And it can help reduce risk during the pandemic, because it means people, particularly vulnerable people and those at high risk, don't need to go to a supermarket, to the bank, to the council to request a service. But obviously there are benefits to the organisations as well. So for service providers, and I must stress that these have to be well-designed digital services. You can't just put anything online and expect that it will work and that people will want to use them. But if you take the time to design and develop a service around the needs of the people who are going to use it, they can be much more effective and efficient. In the council, we use that for council tax support and housing benefit claims. That's been very successful. Leisure memberships have been really successful. Payments and service requests, they're services that we've provided online for a long time now. In the government, car tax renewals done online, blue badge applications are now online. And in the NHS, originally it was around booking appointments, but now they are starting to do online, video consultations to reduce the risk of people having to go into surgeries. And we know the third sector also want to use them. And I think the view is that if you can have a well-designed digital service and it's appropriate to be delivered digitally, and we do accept that not everything would be, but that would then help you deploy scarce people resources to providing the more intensive face-to-face help for service users and residents who need it. So in terms of what we're already doing, over the summer, the Department for Education funded 700 devices and 130 Wi-Fi dongles, which were distributed to vulnerable children and young people across the borough to help them continue with education while schools were closed. We've been running a pilot with Age Concern in customer services that started towards the end of August, and so far 50 people who've come into customer services at the council to do something have been asked if they'd like to learn how to do it online, and they've said yes. So Age Concern have helped them to do that transaction online and have offered them additional support and training, and that's gone really well, and it's just been agreed to extend that pilot through to Christmas. So we are going to do some work to understand the sorts of people who are using that service, because that might help us have a little bit more information about where the need is for support. Barclays provide a program called Digital Eagles, and whereas it doesn't support end users, sort of residents or tenants, they will come in and work with staff to give them digital skills to help support users of services. And it's something that we have been discussing with Inspire in terms of whether it's something that could help develop the digital capacity in the third sector in the borough. Digital inclusion activities have been included in the economic recovery plans that are being developed both locally for the council and regionally across the North East. And last month we had a meeting with a number of partners across the borough to just currently understand what is happening around digital inclusion, because there are opportunities for training and for people to access devices, but on occasion people aren't taking up those opportunities, and I know that was something Age Concern found. So it's trying to do a bit of an exercise to bring together the demand with where organisations may have support, access to devices, or time to give people training and skills. And we're also working with the skills service as well to look to formalise that. So that's a piece of work which will continue. You know, I think with all of the digital inclusion, it's really important to remember that, you know, for every statistic, there is a person at the end of that who, for whatever reason, isn't online, and they will need a different solution. It could be that someone is really keen to get online but just doesn't have access to the devices. It could be that someone has a device but just doesn't know how to use it, isn't confident using it, or maybe it hasn't occurred to them to use skills they may have. They may be great on social media, but they've never thought about whether they could do something else online that would benefit them. So it really is a broad range of activities that kind of focus in on the people. But it was a really positive meeting in September with our partners across the borough, and we will continue that and look for ways to develop it. It's obviously challenging at the moment to deliver face-to-face training because of social distancing. But obviously Age Concern managed to do it securely, and we will look to see whatever we can do. So on the last slide, I just provided access to some of the reports that I've referenced, because there are interesting data out there. There's lots of different ways of looking at, you know, the different sectors who are impacted in different ways. So it is something that is being reported on. We don't have very detailed data in the borough. It's something I would be really keen to get, but it would obviously be quite intensive to try and collect that information. So I don't know if there are any questions around, you know, what we know.
Okay, can I just thank you, Caroline, for that very informative presentation, which in the 21st century is very, very important. And obviously, you've given a number of perspectives, and one of them is, from our point of view, as the People Select Committee, is the perspective for South Tyneside Council. So thank you very much for that. Now, I'm going to bring members in. I'm just quickly looking here. Councillor Francis wants to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Councillor, just a moment. Councillor Hay. Councillor Foreman, who I'll include, right? Okay. Can I thank the lead members for coming today? Councillor Smith, I forgot my manners at the beginning there. Councillor Smith, thank you for your attendance. And the Deputy Leader, Tracy Dixon's also here. thank you very, very much for your attendance. And also, Steve Price, I forgot to mention yourself, Steve. Thanks for coming. So at the moment, I've got Councillor Francis, Councillor here, and Councillor Foreman.
Chairman, just I think Councillor Traynor has indicated that she'd like to speak.
Okay, and Susan Traynor, right. Well, we'll
Chair.
start with
Councillor Robertson, Chair.
Councillor Robertson as well.
Okay. Okay, can I start with Councillor Francis then, please? And everybody else can mute their microphone.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Caroline for that, for the information and the presentation. I've got a couple of questions. One that's kind of a detailed one, and the second one's more of a rhetorical question. So I'll do them one at a time if that's okay. The first one was to do with, I think it's page 5 of your presentation, where you talk about a third of people who describe themselves as, quote, not interested, and 48% of the digitally excluded state that nothing would motivate them to get online. I just wondered if you could let us know how those figures were obtained. I mean, obviously it wasn't an online survey. So how those figures were obtained and how what the sample size was?
I would have to look, it'll be one of the 2 reports referenced at the end. So if I can come back to you with the detail and read up on that, but it would have come from there. And you're right, it is difficult to assess these sorts of things. So yes, I'll provide an update on the source for that.
That's great, thank you. And then the second point is more of a rhetorical question, really, on the wider subject of digital engagement. And obviously, one of the benefits of doing a meeting like this online is that many members of the public are able to view this who might not be able to physically get to the town hall and see a meeting in person. So I think, you know, that shows the benefits. And I gather that these committee meetings have been better attended virtually by observers than maybe their physical meetings that we have at the town hall. But in the subject of digital engagement, I think it's really important to lead by example. And given that this is Local Democracy Week, I'm just wondering what kind of an example we as the council are setting if we don't embrace the technology and if we end up going a full year without a full council meeting. Thank
you. I don't know if you expect a reply because you did say it was a rhetorical meeting, a rhetorical question. Fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Chair,
thanks for that, Councillor Francis.
Chair,
Yes.
it's Tracy. Chair. Just
Go ahead, Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just coming in with obviously with regard to Councillor Francis, just to give you a little bit of a clear understanding, Councillor Francis, there has been regular conversations about council meetings. The local authority obviously has set up with the cabinet, and then with the CAFs, and now obviously the committee meetings and panel meetings via Zoom. But the council officers are working extremely hard to get council meetings up and running again. So hopefully after the year, it's because of the number of participants that's causing the problem, Councillor Francis, but hopefully after the year, January, we should be able to get some council meetings up and running. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Dixon. I was going to bring you in anyway with Moira at the end of this discussion. So can I ask Councillor here to ask her a question or comment now, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a difficult time for everybody given this pandemic. But, you know, you stated in your presentation, Caroline, which was very good presentation, I have to say, but you stated about digital inclusion for everyone. Not everybody in our communities, you know, have access to laptops, computers, broadband even. More so now that a lot of people are financially stretched given the current situation. So I worry for my residents, you know, where can they go to access a computer? You talk about learning through Age Concern and other agencies, but a lot of these agencies aren't just drop-ins, and it is restricted at the moment, given the restrictions we're under because of COVID. So I'm just wondering what can be done to help support our residents, because as I said, more and more things are done online. You know, the application for benefits, you know, getting information, people have to go online. And a lot of our vulnerable adults don't have access to that. So what can we do to help support our residents in our communities?
Well, I think there's a range of things. I think one of the key things is the connectivity, because without that, there is no point having the skills or the motivation or the willingness to do it if you can't physically get online. So sometimes that's about the device. We know that obviously there are devices in the public libraries. We're going to do a bit of work to look at to see how well they're used and if there's opportunities to promote those further. Public Wi-Fi in buildings and in the town and village centres would be a great step forward. So if people have a phone, they can then go and do stuff on that way without using their own data. That obviously comes at a cost. It's about building in bids for funding, I think, in all development projects to try and make sure, because increasingly, particularly younger people, expect public Wi-Fi to be available wherever they go. They just see it as a commodity like electricity. And we did a piece of work pre-pandemic where we had some of our care leaver ambassadors came in and talked to us about what they would want from the town centre digitally. And they talked about parking, and they were quite clear to say they don't carry cash, they don't carry coins, and if they can't pay for it on their phone, they wouldn't bother coming. So, and that expectation is along with that, you know, that there is the Wi-Fi in those places, it's publicly available, that people can get on and do things. So I think it's about seeing every opportunity. We'll be bidding for any funding that comes out. As I said, I know they are looking to put stuff in the economic recovery plans, recognising that people will need access and devices, skills to move into, you know, whatever the economy becomes post-pandemic. But it is hard, and it is a combination of factors. We think we can promote what's available a bit better. That might pick up people who are already interested in doing it. But as you say, not everyone, you know, if somebody's working long hours and in an existing job, it may not be available at a time that they would need. So we just need to try and be as flexible as we can. It is difficult. Ultimately, without the connectivity and the devices, that has to be the starting point. Once you know that's available, it becomes easier then to help give people skills and confidence and let them see the benefit.
I'm sorry, Chair, if I may come back on that, just with regards to those people that are more vulnerable, who can't get out to access services, that's what worries me. It worries me greatly with my constituents. I have a lot of constituents who can't get out, you know, and they're having to apply for things online, you know, and there isn't any support mechanism there at the moment to support those residents through that. So I think that's something that we really need to be looking at if funding is available to do it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. If I could just say, we did have adults and integrated care at that borough-wide meeting, and that was the point they were exactly making as well. Yeah. So we will do, and I know we are doing a little bit of work with Alexa at the moment for one of the assisted technology services. Again, it won't be for everybody, but that might be something that is more accessible to someone than a tablet or something. But yes, we'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask Councillor Foreman to express his comments or ask questions now, please?
Yeah, just probably a comment and a question. Caroline, you mentioned age concern, but there'll be more third-party opportunities or third-party organisations who do help people, and I just wondered whether you had a list of them that could be sent to councillors so that we can sort of tap into their opportunities, that they have for our sort of residents. One of the things that Pat spoke about there was places for people to go to use the equipment, and I just wondered whether has anybody approached South Tyneside Homes, because, and I'll declare an interest because I'm talking about South Tyneside Homes, I'm a board member, but all of the Housing Plus sites are connected to Wi-Fi and the internet, and there would be an ideal situation for elderly people to go and meet other elderly people who are either using the equipment or using the internet, and maybe get one of these third-party users to go and train people on site where the access is. And I just wondered if anybody's ever thought of that.
That is exactly the sort of thing that we're looking at. South Tyneside Homes, we're at the meeting in the end of September, as were a number of the organisations. So we are looking to pull together that full list of who can provide the support, how it's provided, whether it's targeted at particular groups or whether it's open access. But the scenario you've just described of using, because one of the things was talked about was sharing physical space, sharing locations, and that's exactly what we would like to do to get to that point, and also to deliver things in a place where people feel comfortable and relaxed. So if it is something new, they're going to be more willing to engage and maybe learn a little easier, because we know some people do find it worrying and stressful, and we certainly don't want to add to that. But the opportunity to use, you know, good locations that are friendly and welcoming is certainly something we would look for. So yes, the Housing Plus schemes is something that would be on our list.
And will the councillors be kept in the loop about this sort of thing that's happening, because it'll be happening in their wards?
Well, I've previously presented this into the Cleaner, Greener Communities Board, so we'll be reporting back through there, but I can also agree, you know, what's a right way to provide regular feedbacks into this meeting as well. And we do want to get that message out across the borough so people can, you know, if you see an opportunity or someone has a need, you could refer people into it. So yes, we'll find a way to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Jim. Can I call on Councillor Susan Traynor now, please? Questions and comments, Susan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation this morning, Caroline. It's always interesting to find out how we are doing digitally with digital engagement, because what we take for granted, obviously there's still a lot of people out there, obviously, you know, are still being, well, not deprived of it, but obviously are still not aware of what, you know, obviously what's on offer. But can I go back to your figures for the North East, because they threw me a little bit, because what you said was 49% of the North East population was low engagement, which meant 51% was high. But then you went on to say without intervention, it was predicted to be 40% in 2030. So that's going down. I'm not quite sure I understand those figures.
Sorry, that's the way I presented to them. It was 49% with low or very low digital engagement. So the other 51% would probably be medium through to high. And then it was showing that by 2030, the number of people with low digital engagement would still be at 40%. So it's basically saying in 10 years, based on these figures, we would only have an extra 9% people moving out of being badly digitally excluded, which is pretty shocking, really. You know, I think everyone would expect that, you know, particularly as younger people move through society who, you know, digitally native in terms of their skills and expectations, even if they struggle with the connectivity, they're certainly much more comfortable and used to it than people of my generation. So yes, that's what that was meant to be indicating, that if we don't take interventions ourselves, the societal trend will be slow and we will still have 40% of people with low or very low digital engagement.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Caroline. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Susan. Councillor Robertson, questions and comments, please.
Yeah, a couple of points, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much, Caroline, for the report. Within that report, Caroline, obviously you don't make any reference to elected members. It covers, you know, the vast population, etc. Could you inform us, please, does the council have the technology, whether it's Zoom or anything else, to carry out a full council meeting, including officers, etc.?
As Councillor Dixon said, and as has been reported into Cabinet, we do have, you know, as we now are using Zoom to run meetings. What we haven't done is run a meeting with the full number of people who would be on a council meeting. That is something we do need to test, and we are working on looking at what the implications would be on the infrastructure. So
what I'm saying is, whether it's Zoom or any other entity, have we got that technology to do that with full council and the officers?
Well, we haven't tested it yet. No, not for that number of people.
So, you know, I'm not, Caroline, I'm not aiming at yourself, but why has that not been done?
Well,
Chair, sorry, Caroline, can I just come in, Chair? Just Councillor Robertson, can I just give you some reassurance? The officers are finding it extremely challenging and they are working through a process to try and get these meetings up and running. We have had regular conversations about it, but it's getting the right technology in place so that once we start these virtual meetings, they'll continue so they don't drop off. Councillor Robertson. So they are working on it. They're trying their utmost to get these up and running, Councillor Robertson.
So, as the Deputy Leader of the Council, can I ask you, when Caroline's just replied there, why has it not been tested? The public are desperate to see what's going on in local democracy, and we're telling them it's going to be 2021, which is a disgrace.
It's not that they're trying their utmost, Councillor Robertson. They really are. It's not, they have got different things and they are working through it. Am I right, Caroline?
We
it's
are
challenging and they're working through it. It's not that they're sitting back and not doing it. They're trying to get it right for the residents and ourselves to make sure that we can get these meetings and they continue, they don't drop off.
But what I'm saying to you, the Deputy Leader,
oh, yes.
Why has it not been done? It's saying that it's going to be done, it's going to be looked into. Is it not a massive priority for the local democracy?
Right. Can I just come in there, please? Councillor Robertson, I think you've made your point. You've made your point fairly well. It's been answered several times. I think we're just starting to repeat ourselves here.
Okay.
Is there any other questions or comments that you have?
No, that'll do. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Smith, Moira Smith, would you like to say anything as the lead member, or Councillor Dixon, would you like to add anything further to what you've said?
No, I'm fine, Chair.
Councillor Smith, Moira Smith.
Yeah. Caroline mentioned during the presentation about the 700 laptops and dongles that we applied to government for those. It was during lockdown, and it was for children who did not have access to them at home, so that they couldn't do all the home learning that other children were doing. So it's just to explain that point. We asked the schools to give numbers for children who might need them, and we applied to the government. We did get them, we sorted them all out, and they were handed back to the schools, and the schools handed them out to the children. So we wanted to make sure that every child in the borough had access to home learning. Okay,
Great.
Chair?
Great. Caroline, can I just make one little point, which I actually made at the business meeting? A lot of older people are more or less frightened to engage with this new technology. And I know we've taken steps as a council to try and alleviate that fear. But I have another fear, which is an economic one, in the fact that, you know, online banking's available, online shopping's available. But I'm a bit of a dinosaur in the fact that I like to go out to the bank, I like to go out to the shops, and I refuse to be served or self-serve at a supermarket, because what I'm interested in is people in employment. People in employment, to me, is more important than somebody having a Zoom meeting. So that's just a comment. I don't need you to comment on that, but I think that is an important part. Technology is more than useful. It's, you know, it's the future, and it's going to get better. But there is a downside to that technology, I feel, in the fact that, you know, people will become unemployed because of the fact that, you know, their role will be superseded, because, as in the bank in heaven, TSB Bank in Heaven, which is closing next year, they feel that the footfall's not good enough, and they're going to close that outlet, which makes it difficult for older and vulnerable people to attend a thing. So I think it's worth mentioning there is a human side to this technology as well. But thank you very, very much for your presentation this morning. It certainly engaged the members and some good questions there. So, okay, we're now going to move on to the next item, which is universal credit, which is being presented by Anna Milner, Operations Manager, Housing Strategy. Now, Anna is very, very passionate, as is Caroline, but Anna is very passionate about the subject. And just for Anna's information, my members are all extremely well read and have already been through this presentation a number of times. So can I just ask you to make the salient points, please, in your presentation? And then we'll have a discussion and questions at the end. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. No problem. I think just to kind of, I guess, give a little bit of an update on universal credit. We did agree that we would bring regular updates now to People Select. So I will just try and kind of point out the things that maybe have changed since the last presentation, but also some of the challenges that we've actually experienced through the COVID pandemic as well. As everybody knows, universal credit is the kind of government flagship benefit scheme, and a lot of things that we've been talking about previously this morning about digital inclusion, etc., feeds directly into universal credit because it is a completely managed, applied benefit online. So again, it's another reason why we need to promote financial inclusion. So in terms of preparation before universal credit came, I think both South Tyneside Homes and the council were as prepared as we could be. We were one of the last local authority areas to go to full service, and we did learn from a lot of other local authorities that have already gone over to full service universal credit, and we engaged quite extensively with a number of our partners, internal departments, but also external departments and you know, DWP themselves, some of the third sector, etc. And the strategic group that we have set up is not just about the implementation of universal credit, but also about the impact and what this means for services, residents and the council moving forward. So in terms of the impact that we've had in terms of universal credit, one of the biggest challenges that we faced, certainly at the start of universal credit, was making sure that people could actually apply effectively, which meant that, you know, we had to make sure that people had those digital skills, and we put a lot of emphasis onto that. But actually, some of the other problems or challenges that we had concerned things like people's budgeting skills. So under universal credit, tenants actually have the responsibility to pay their own rent. And at the start of universal credit, DWP were very clear that only in very exceptional circumstances would vulnerable people be allowed to have their rent paid directly to the landlord, in this case the council. But actually what we found is there are a number of people who mightn't be as technically vulnerable as DWP might have thought, but actually do need support in terms of things like having their rent paid directly to the landlord. So that's been much more successful than it was at the start of universal credit. At the moment, we have over a quarter of council tenants who receive universal credit. At the point of writing this report, there was actually a significant number of those people that were in rent arrears. The report is 82%. Now I think that was significantly higher than it had been, mainly due to the COVID pandemic. But we had our strategy group at the end of last week, and that percentage has actually come down significantly, and it's just less than 60% now. So I think the work that South Tyneside Homes income team and the welfare support team have really helped that proportion of our tenants to actually get back on track with their rent account. So that's been really successful, although there still is a number of households that actually have very high rent arrears. So again, the team have done a restructure, and they're trying to target some of those households that actually are putting their own tenancy at risk now due to the level of rent arrears that they have, and trying to get at the bottom of what's causing that. Is it other financial hardship, and is there other support that we can give? The average rent arrears for households on universal credit as of the start of September was £655. Again, this is a significant amount of rent arrears, not just for the local authority or the landlord to stand as a business, but also as each of the households to try and pay back. So again, we'll be working very proactively with a number of these households to try and tackle this rent arrears, to make sure that not only that they have the budgeting skills to be able to manage their finances, but also that they're making sure that they can deal with priority debts such as rent arrears and council tax arrears. That notwithstanding, some of these arrears are known as technical arrears because universal credit is paid in arrears, if you know what I mean. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the rent account to catch up to the payments of universal credit. In terms of total arrears from universal credit claimants, again, at the time of writing this report, it was just over 2 million. Because we have managed to work to reduce those rent arrears, it's currently standing at 1.6 million. Again, very significant figures in terms of income to the local authority and cash flow, but we need to make sure that we support our tenants in being able to repay that debt and again not put their tenancy at a risk at any point. I've talked a little bit there about alternative payment arrangements. Again, the DWP are slightly more flexible than they were at the start, although I'm quite confident that once universal credit is further rolled out, they might relook at this. But at the moment, the alternative payment arrangements have been very successful in terms of supporting some of our vulnerable tenants and those that are given new tenancies. So those that are given an introductory tenancy and maybe don't have those budgeting skills, it gives us a little bit of time to work with them and be able to put those skills in place and make them understand the importance of paying their rent. South Tyneside Homes have focused on trying to encourage people to pay by direct debit, and we have an increasing number of people paying by direct debit, and actually this has increased again during COVID. Previously people might have used some of our payment points, but again, because people maybe aren't leaving the house, and as a way to pay automatically and not have to worry about that, more people are signing up for direct debit. Which is in a lot of cases better for the local authority and for the tenant as well. There is a range of support out there in the borough, and I think we need to continue to promote that. Citizens Advice do hold the national contract for the help to claim service. So that's not just about allowing people to claim online and giving them the digital skills, but also the budgeting and financial support as well around debt advice, etc. Although this has become quite difficult to provide at the level of service during the pandemic, due to the fact that a lot of debt advice is sometimes better face-to-face, etc. So again, that's something that has become a challenge during these times. In terms of the impact that COVID had, we did see an increase in the number of people claiming universal credit, as would be expected. And I think we're gearing ourselves up to see further increases, as unfortunately redundancies is likely to increase. The end of furlough might mean a number of people are again put at more risk of losing their jobs, and the economic uncertainty of the area really kind of lends itself to the fact that more people might need support moving forward. However, it's not just about numbers. A lot of the people who are actually now claiming universal credit since COVID, it's a different cohort, it's a different profile. We're seeing people who were employed for long periods of time who maybe don't have a good knowledge of the benefit system. So therefore, again, they've got other challenges in terms of claiming benefits or knowing where to go for support. So it's our responsibility to, again, promote that and trying to support those in the way that they need. We've had reports from Age Concern that there's a number of people in the older age bracket, so that kind of 55 plus age bracket, who are now finding themselves having to claim universal credit, and in the past maybe that they've been employed for a long period of time. That brings its own challenges in terms of maybe reskilling the population, and also some of the barriers that the older population may find in some of the jobs that are available. Also, central government, a lot of the apprenticeships, Kickstart, etc., are focused on the younger cohort. So again, we need to make sure that, you know, some of those other age groups aren't being left behind. And as I've said, certainly at the start of lockdown, all of the services weren't able to be delivered face-to-face, and that proved challenging, particularly for some of our vulnerable and hard to engage with customers. We have started some face-to-face benefit advice now, again in a COVID secure location, but also telephone support, etc., is still available. So in terms of our future priorities and the challenges moving forward, I think the council recognises that there still is, unfortunately, a little bit of a crisis culture in the borough, and that we don't seem to maybe be able to link some of those excellent services that we have in the borough with those that need it the most. So we've looked at how can we make the community a little bit more resilient, and maybe provide services in a different way. We're contemplating looking at things like social navigators to try and support people through the kind of range of services that are available, rather than just signposting. It would be much more of a hand-holding service for those that need it. And that would give people skills to move forward as well, not just to deal with the crisis that they were facing at that particular time. Obviously, rent arrears and council tax arrears, again, another significant issue for us, but we've made real good progress over the last couple of months, despite some of the real challenges that we had during COVID. Would continue to support our tenants, and obviously homelessness is always on the forefront of our mind, so eviction would be the last kind of last resort. Although we need to be mindful that that mightn't be the case within the private rented sector, as a lot of tenants in the private rented sector might have fallen into rent arrears during the COVID period as well. So that is obviously a challenge that we'll have to deal with if we do see the increase that we're expecting. The need for budget and support and advice remains high in the borough, but unfortunately the take-up isn't as high. So again, we need to rethink how we promote those services. And we also have a bit of a challenge with people not actually claiming the benefits that they're entitled to. Again, maybe leaving themselves in a worse financial position, because they're not aware of the benefits that they're entitled to, or for whatever reason they're not choosing to apply for them. So we're starting a campaign to try and promote benefit checks. So either Tyneside Homes and their welfare support team would undertake those, citizens advice, age concern, or some of our other third sector organisations. But we think that there's definitely a campaign to be had around trying to promote benefit checks for those older people, particularly those who may not think that claiming a small amount of benefit would be worth it, but actually it entitles them to other things such as free TV licenses, etc. So I think during this campaign we'll try and promote getting a benefit check for those households that maybe have changed circumstances during COVID as well. And again, trying to promote income and maximise their income as much as possible. Okay, I know I've kind of swept through that as fast as possible, but hopefully if anybody's got any questions.
Thanks very, very much for that, Anna. I've got a quick question for you, and then I'll bring members in. And have we got enough staff trained to help?
I think in terms of the benefit checks, what we've decided to do is do a kind of stepped approach, and we will monitor how many people are coming through the door. We have not only do we have the welfare support team who can do these benefit checks, but we also have a number of other frontline staff. There are, we have a pre-tenancy support team who do things like income and expenditure, so they would be able to pick up on whether they thought somebody was maybe missing a claim for a benefit, etc. I think if we do kind of discover that there are stresses or pressures on our resources, then obviously we would have to look at maybe rebalancing that and making sure that we are being able to provide a service for those that need it.
Right, thanks for that. Any members wish to ask a question or make comments? Councillor Francis, I've got your hand. I've got Councillor Keegan. Just 2 seconds, I'll swipe along here. Councillor Peacock, Councillor Kilgour. Was that your hand up there, Jim? Yeah.
Councillor Hay, Chair.
Councillor Hay. Thanks very much for that, Paul. Okay.
Chair, I think Councillor Robertson's indicated he wanted to speak as well.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Anna, for that report. Obviously, fully appreciate that the current circumstances would have stretched any system of support like universal credit or any alternative would have been really stretched because of what's happened in the last 6 months or so, and obviously going forward as well. But that said, there are people in our communities who believe that universal credit is a flawed system in the first place, and some people would argue that it's inefficient and has loopholes that mean that many people are denied the support that they need. And I think it's important to look at potential alternatives and find a better way forward if possible. I know that Norwich City Council unanimously passed a motion recently calling for a trial of universal basic income in their online full council meeting in July. And Labour-led councils in Sheffield, Liverpool and Hull have also expressed their intentions to trial universal basic income. Leeds City Council discussed this at their meeting in September of this year and agreed a motion calling on the government to trial universal basic income. That was an online meeting despite the fact that they have nearly double the number of councillors that we have in South Tyneside. I'm aware of some of the arguments for and against, and I can appreciate, honestly, both sides of the argument, but I would like to suggest that this committee considers the merits of calling on the government to pilot a universal basic income in South Tyneside. And I'd like to suggest that that might be added to the work programme for the year, if possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor Francis. Councillor Keegan.
Well, thank you, Anna, for that presentation. My residents, quite a few are concerned about the £20 universal credit uplift ending in April. Obviously, you'll have concerns yourselves. Obviously, I look at the impact it's going to have on your team, and have you anything in place to mitigate that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I think the kind of data that we're getting from DWP at the moment is that they haven't made a decision on whether or not that will just be a cliff edge of £20 removed completely, or there will be, what will happen come April. I think because that additional £20 was supposed to support people over the COVID period and the additional kind of expenditure that they might have had to deal with over COVID, it was only ever seen as a short-term measure. But I think there's other challenges that we have in terms of maximising income in general anyway. So I think until we know exactly what DWP are going to do around this additional £20, whether it's going to be reduced, whether it's going to be removed, or whether it's going to remain, I think it's really difficult to know what the impact's going to be on our residents.
Right, thanks, Anna. Thank you.
Councillor Peacock. Margaret.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that report. You mentioned private renters in your presentation. Apart from the CAB, where else can they go? Can they come to you for advice?
Yes, the South Tyneside Homes Welfare Support is a tenure blind service. So owner occupiers, private renters, social renters from other landlords can all access that service.
Thank you.
Councillor here, please.
Thanks, Chair. With regards to universal credit, we're going to find in our constituencies more and more people having to apply for this due to the current situation. What is going to be put in place to support them if they fall into rent arrears? You've already touched on that briefly within your presentation, but I've dealt with somebody this past week, you know, who's gone through a minefield trying to get universal credit, waited 9 weeks for it to come through, fell into arrears, and has been hassled non-stop to pay the rent. So to me, we need to be working with these people, you know, and you've said yourself, you know, you've got officers in place to either do face-to-face work or telephone consultations with them. But it is a huge concern moving forward for my residents, and I'm sure for the other councillors' residents as well, because more and more people are going to fall into this category. Thank you.
No, certainly not. We certainly, presumably they were a council tenant, is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. I think it is difficult to get that balance between those kind of can't pays and won't pays, and I think that's sometimes the challenge that we have in terms of getting the right support to the individual household. But certainly the bottom line and the emphasis is definitely on support rather than that kind of, you know, demanding letters, because other impacts in terms of impacts on people's mental well-being. It can impact on their whole, you know, kind of financial well-being as well if they go and unfortunately take unsecure loans out, or if they take doorstop lending money, etc. So certainly the heavy-handed approach would not be the way that the council would look at that. I think we need to make sure that tenants, when they need support, they feel able to ask for that support at the right time before they get into you know, debt that's actually very difficult to get back from.
Thank you for that.
There appears to have, oh, he's back.
Yes, Paul there. I'm having interference throughout this meeting by somebody, but never mind, unfortunately. Can we have Councillor Kilgour now, please? And we will stick to the items on the agenda.
Oh, that's good to know, Chair, unlike the beginning of the meeting. Chair, I would just like to ask, it's pretty much Councillor Keegan's question, actually, with regards to the extra payments. I'd like to congratulate the welfare support team for the support to my residents over this particular period.
Who's the dog?
Oh, it's mine. But I
you're
can't.
You're in a meeting. Can you put the dog away for the meeting? Hey, man alive.
Chair, I'm pleased to note that my dog speaks lots of sense. I would like to congratulate the team, the welfare support team, over this particular period, but the extra payments, as Councillor Keegan said, have become known and well used and relied upon by our particular residents. What I was wondering was, can this committee actually add any weight to the pressure on the government to maintain those payments in the future? And I wondered if we wanted to write to the Secretary of State in support of that, Chair.
Are you coming on that, Anna?
I think that it would. I don't know how much weight it would add if we did, you know, threw our hat into the ring. But I certainly agree with the members' points that actually now that residents are used to that additional income, it becomes very difficult to then take it away, and particularly because we now know that what we may have thought was short-term additional expenditure because of COVID actually might last for a much longer period of time, in terms of people spending longer in their homes. So, you know, there might be additional costs on utility bills, that kind of thing.
Okay. Any other members wish to comment on that particular issue? We'll leave it to the work programme, I think.
Aye.
Okay, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anna, for the report. A couple of points, Anna, please. Not aimed at yourself in any shape or form. I agree with what Councillor Hayes just said about how some residents have been trapped with arrears. In my experience, there has been some very, very bad ill treatment of South Tyneside Homes residents for their arrears. And this cannot be allowed because it is going to deteriorate more. We can see that happening. And as I say, it's not aimed at yourself because it's above yourself that we've dealt with people and it needs urgent action. Yeah, that's one of my points. The second point is within the booklet for this meeting, you know, at the last meeting I mentioned about mail shots being delivered for vulnerable people that haven't got access to the internet. Could you tell us when the last mail shot was sent out and when the next one will be? Bear in mind, we're heading for a second wave, please.
I believe that the next residents newsletter is due out before Christmas. It's usually around November time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as I say, just that point about the arrears, we're going to get deeper and people have got to be treated right. It's atrocious what some people have suffered.
If you wanted to email me any details of those particular cases, I can certainly look into those for you.
Thanks very much, Anna.
Okay, if members feel that they've been paid enough.
Yeah, Chair, it's just Tracy. Councillor Robertson.
Hello, Chair.
It is due out, that residents' newsletter is due out, Councillor Robertson.
I mean, just from my perspective on that, we always try to give support and advice to everybody in the borough, especially the more vulnerable people, and that's been the experience of myself as a councillor for the last 18 years, that we've always supported people, and I think we always will. So, and hopefully that's what we're all about. Okay, if that's discussion's finished, can I just thank you, Anna, for coming along this morning? And, you know, I know how passionate you are about your subject matter and about your vocation that you have. So good luck in the future. And if there's anything that this committee or any of the councillors can help you with, please just ask. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I just come on to the next item on the agenda? And I'm going to ask Paul Baldaccio, our Strategy and Democracy Officer, to present this item. There's obviously something that's been mentioned already this morning, Paul, you know, about writing letters and...
Yes, Chair.
Would you like to talk about that one first?
Well, I mean, if members agree, we can certainly get a letter from the chair to the Secretary of State on any matter that you wish. I think it's how much effect those letters have is a matter for debate, but it certainly is making the point from the committee, you know, different points from the committee and sending it to where it needs to be heard. And we normally do get replies, so happy to do that, Chair. In terms of the overall work programme, I have been, because things have, you know, continued to change, I've been reluctant to present you for a work programme that's going to take you well into next year. However, there is the matter of the Commission on Poverty, which Anna and myself, along with Sam Start and Anna Christian from Public Health, will be talking about this afternoon. If I can just share my screen with you briefly, Chair. I'll be able to show you where we're at with that. This is actually the original scope of the commission. So we had an introductory session. We're going to talk about the provision of food banks and other initiatives and holiday hunger. And you can see along that column, we're starting to talk about the different people to include. Obviously, we're starting to talk about universal credit and welfare support with Anna. There are others would want to involve with that. But there are the other issues which were agreed about fuel and period poverty, which was one of the sessions, support for carers, access to health and social care, access to education, which we've touched upon, and also access to transport, particularly for employment, for healthcare, for further education. So we'll be finalising that programme for members' approval, and what we would want to do is to fill the agendas for the rest of the municipal year alongside these other things. You know, for instance, we have the universal basic income programme, which we've made a note of. So I think that will, I think it's important that the programme is dealing with the things that members find and residents, more importantly, find most important and immediate now, rather than to look at anything more, you know, strategic in the future, which is my view. But it's, as ever, it's the members' work programme, and I would ask you whether you are happy with the approach that we're taking.
Paul, I'm always more than happy with having worked with you quite a number of years. Can I just touch on the Poverty Commission? Obviously, under normal circumstances, just for newer members who are on this committee or members of the public watching, we would normally have had a lot more work done than we have done at the moment. But having said that, the work that we have done, I still feel there's two recommendations that we can still put forward to Cabinet.
Yeah.
Regarding how we can help the more vulnerable in South Tyneside. And to that end, I'm prepared to work with yourself and others so that we can achieve that, because I would like something put into the Cabinet in December, January, for them to take forward and take a look at, Paul.
Yeah, Chair, that was the other thing that I was going to mention. Normally, under normal circumstances, a commission would take a pretty linear approach in that it would have a scope, would finish the work, would make recommendations to Cabinet. Given the format and the enormity of the task and the area, what I would suggest is treating the area of poverty as perhaps some more like episodes in a series where we can make regular reports and recommendations to Cabinet throughout, and not just wait till the end, because some of these the recommendations that you will make will be things that you want to urgently recommend Cabinet do. So I would endorse that approach, making recommendations at regular intervals rather than wait until the end.
Yeah. Can I just say also, Paul, just to the members and colleagues, that anything that you feel is paramount importance, just pick up the phone, send me an email, and I will ensure that that subject matter can be put somewhere on the work programme. But particularly on the Poverty Commission, I feel that especially in the times that we're living through now, we need to help the poor and the vulnerable immediately. They can't wait. It's something like this subject matter cannot wait. So any comments from members, please?
I believe
Councillor Ellison.
Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I agree with what you're saying. I think the Poverty Commission is the right direction to be travelling in. Just as another item on the work programme, would it be possible to have some sort of update on the winter programme? I know that there's a submission date, the central government coming up fairly soon. It would be good to get some sort of overview on what the local authorities do in terms of adult social care over the winter period, and how it can influence that.
I suspect that that could be coupled with the NHS's winter preparations. Well, it's almost not winter preparations now. It's going into that particular period. So yes, we could certainly do that. You're on mute. Sorry, Chair.
Any other members wish to make a point on the work programme? Like I say, just come to me at any time or Paul, and just, if you know, if there's a subject matter you want raising, raise it.
Excuse me, Chair. Excuse me, Chair. I'd like to make a proposal to put onto the work programme. As we've gone through this pandemic, there's been more and more health-related issues. And in the past, we've had some of our partners from the NHS Trust talk to us about the mental health services that are provided. There's a huge input that we can have into this and working with our partners. But I need to know, are those services going to be sustainable for our residents? And I think this is something that we need to put on the work programme with regards to mental health related issues and how our partners are dealing with that. Thanks, Chair.
Pat, can I just say that, you know, in the business meetings I have with Paul and others, can I discuss that at the business meeting, come back here?
Yes, certainly, no problem.
Thanks. Okay,
Hello, sorry, I've been waving, Councillor McKay.
Can I speak?
Yeah, I've just swept across there. Hello, Councillor Peacock. Yes, fire away.
Oh yes, I was waving, but nobody's supposed to see me. Just to say, could we update the work that we've already done on the poverty thing, because there's a lot of changes happened since then. We have a new food bank in my ward, Beats Helping Hand, and we need to update the work we've already done because there's a lot changed over that time.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
Chair, can I speak, please?
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. On the back of what Councillor Hayes just.
Oh, he's
meeting booklet here under
Councillor Robertson, you've seemed to have disappeared into the ether. We can't hear. Councillor Robertson, can you hear me? You disappeared there. Can you just start again, please?
I can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear us, Chair?
Yes.
At page 3 of the meeting booklet, in the last paragraph, it states a member
Chair, can I suggest that Councillor Robertson makes his suggestion outside of the meeting, and then we can include it?
I mean, I've already said that, but he seems to have disappeared into the ether, so yes, we'll do that. All right. He's obviously having some kind of problem. The next item on the agenda is Chairman's urgent items.
Councillor McDavis, Chair, could I come in here, please? I've waited until the end of the meeting, if I may.
No, Chairman's urgent items, and I'm going to thank everybody for their input today. And the business for the day is concluded. This live streaming will now cease. And I can thank any members of the public who've been watching today.
And a point of information,